Go to the ant, you sluggard, and consider her ways and be wise, who having no commander or ruler, stores her provisions in the summer. The New King James Version says, who provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. When times are good, it's hard to consider or even think that things could possibly be contrary to the enjoyment that you're having at that moment in time. But unfortunately, the cycles of life show that every so often, sometimes things are good, and for whatever reason, things can sometimes be a little bit tighter or harder. Now, of course, we are Christians, we are believers, and we don't believe in such negative occurrences. But let me tell you, the Bible says that many are the afflictions of the righteous, but God delivers him from them all. In this life, we will have many tribulations, but nevertheless, God is with us. It's important in times of harvest as believers to recognize that there are things we should be doing to prepare us for the times of winter. We learn that from the book of Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 to 8 from the story of the ant. So what are the things that we are supposed to do? Number one is to save. I'm sure you already know this and you don't need me to tell you. However, please indulge me for a few more minutes. There are two reasons why people save. Contrary to what many people think that we only save for rainy days and for negative situations. Don't get me wrong, that is very, very, very true. But there is another reason, which I will share with you in another video. But today we'll focus on that first reason, which is saving for the rainy days, saving for the times of famine, the times of winter, the times of cold. It is true that we are to save for rainy days. In fact, many people will talk about an emergency fund. You are encouraged often to save £1,000 or $1,000. That's like a minimum level of saving. And whatever currency you have in your local country, to have the equivalent of £1,000 or the equivalent of $1,000 saved for emergencies. Emergencies like your flat tire, or emergencies like your boiler breaking down or your air conditioning breaking down. Things that happen without us planning, things that are sudden, to make sure that we're able to cover for those needs. Other experts go on to say, actually, you should save 1 month worth, at least 1 month worth of your expenses, i.e. your rent, your gas and electricity, your car, food, etc. Saving at least 1 month and then building it up to 2 months, building it up to 3 months, having at least 3 to 6 months worth of savings in your bank account to save for these rainy days. Today we'll be looking at the story of Joseph, which actually takes this savings concept well and far beyond the 3 to 6 months concept. I know there are some of you already in shock, like, I don't think I could ever save 1 month worth or 6 months worth of savings. But let's look at the story in Genesis chapter 41 and verse 33. What does it say? Just to give you a bit of a prelude, many of us will probably already know this, but for anyone who doesn't, Joseph, who was a prisoner, has been brought into the palace of Pharaoh to interpret Pharaoh's dream. Pharaoh's dream talked about seeing 7 fat cows and then 7 lean cows. And then the 7 lean cows ate up the fat cows. And so Joseph has been brought in to interpret this dream. And what does Joseph say to Pharaoh? Joseph says in the preluding verses that this dream has been established because Pharaoh had the dream twice. And basically, there's going to be a famine in the land that is coming that will eat up the days of harvest. Unfortunately, many of us don't think about this aspect or this being a reality, but this is what is happening in this story, in this context. And so now Joseph has already interpreted the dream and he's telling Pharaoh what he needs to do. Verse 33 says, "Now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man," it should say woman, anyways, "and set him up over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep the food in the cities." Verse 36 says, "Then the food shall be as a reserve for the land for 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the times of famine. In this story, we see Joseph not talking about a 3-month saving plan or a 6-month saving plan, but saving enough for 7 years. 7 years. And not just enough for one person or for one family, but actually enough for a whole nation, the whole of Egypt. And we later go on to find that what they saved was not even just enough for them, but actually enough for surrounding nations. Because we hear about how Joseph's brothers leave the land of Canaan, which was supposed to be a land flowing with milk and honey. And they leave the land of Canaan to go to Egypt in search of bread. Anyways, I digress. We will get to that eventually. Now, we learn a few other things, not just the concept of saving, but there are other things that we learn. Number one, we learn that it is wise to save. We see that when he says, set a discerning and a wise man, i.e., if you set another person on top of this to handle this matter, they might not be able to do it. It is wise people that save. So set a discerning and a wise man. What is the opposite of wisdom? Can I ask you that question? The Bible says that the fool says in his heart that there is no God. The opposite of wisdom is actually foolishness. And that prominent statement is seen in the book of Psalms 14, verse 1, that the fool says in his heart that there is no God. That's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about the foolish. Is your lack of and your inability to save a sign of foolishness? If we were to draw a table and have virtues and characteristics of the wise on the left and virtues and characteristics of the foolish on the right, the truth is we would say the wise fears God, the wise saves. The foolish does not fear God. The foolish does not save. These things are evidences of your level of maturity, your level of faith, your level of understanding of the scriptures. We don't have enough time to talk about discernment. We could be here all day talking about discernment. So I'll skip that for now. But I want you to know that it is wise and it is wisdom for you to save. Number two, we see in verse 34 that it says, Joseph says to Pharaoh, let Pharaoh do this and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land. My emphasis here is on the term 1/5. Why did Joseph not say 50%? Why did he not say 10%? He said 1/5, which is equivalent to 20%. For here we see that a biblical recommendation is to save 20%. 20% is the optimum level. Of course, you can save more, but you might run into trouble. You can save less and you might also run into trouble. But from the 20% that Joseph recommended, we see how Egypt was able to survive the times of famine in the following verses. Somebody will say, I can't save 7 years worth of expenses. I can't save 20%. It's too much. And the truth is, I hear you loud and clear. On our way to getting to the optimal, of course, we have to start where we are with what we have. And so I want us to remember that these are principles. They are not laws. As my husband said the other day, that you will not go to hell if you don't give. But of course, there's a level of satisfaction. There's a level of peace and security, financial peace and financial security that you want to have, which is why you will give. And this is why you will save. And so I'm recommending this principle of saving to you. Personally, I recommend that whilst you figure out your expenses, you figure out what percentage is optimal for you, that you should have a minimum of 3 bank accounts that you use to save. 3 types of saving. So not just looking at the percentage, but looking at the types of savings. You should have a short-term savings. Short-term saving are for things that you know are going to happen. Within the next 3 months, it's going to be my husband's birthday. It's going to be my mom's birthday. I'm going to go out. In the next 3 months, it's going to be my birthday and I'm going to want to spend. You should be saving for things like that. You should also have a medium-term savings. This is for things that you're saving for that you know come around every year. Every year in the UK, for example, we have to pay our car insurance. Whether you pay monthly or you pay annually, you know that it's coming. So why do you wait until the day that the bill is due and then say, oh no, I don't have enough money? No, we should be saving for such eventualities. I just talked about birthdays. They happen every year. At the same time, you should be saving for them. Anything that's going to happen within 12 months should go into your medium savings. And then you have your long-term savings. Long-term is looking at a period over 12 months and beyond. So for example, you might be in a situation where you want to save for a house, or you want to save for your ideal holiday, or you want to save for your ideal investment, this is something that you would put in a long-term savings account, or for example, the emergency savings or the 3 to 6 months worth of expenses for a rainy day. Those are the kinds of things you put in your long-term savings. And so depending on what you need to spend at different times, you would either go into your short-term savings, like your emergency fund, £1,000, or you would go into your medium-term savings. God forbid, if anybody lost their job and you needed to pay for your current living expenses. And of course, when you're ready to invest, when you're ready to do that big, goal that you have always had, that's over a 12-month period, you go into your long-term savings. These are the 3 savings accounts that I would recommend. And so from the principle of Joseph and Pharaoh and Egypt and everything that we saw that happened in the book of Genesis, in the verses that we just read, I'm encouraging you, if you don't have savings, or you only have a small, tiny amount that can't really do much, you know your finances more than I do, or you haven't started dividing your savings into different pots or into different levels, into different realms, then I'm encouraging you today to start that habit, Heaven forbid that a time of famine would come and you would have nothing to sustain you or to sustain your family. This has been Business, Faith, and Finance with Benedicta.